How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of On the Line. Guys, today we're going to be talking about the dangers of small talking with an inmate. I have Joe. Joe, what's up, brother?
Hey, what's happening, Anthony? What's up, my brother?
Hey, Joe, you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Absolutely. I'm Joe Pomponio. I'm a retired lieutenant of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice of 30 years and hanging out with Anthony, man, living the dream.
Yeah, I love this stuff, man. I mean, it's just good to have a dialogue. Guys, if you get a chance, check out the other video we did about a week ago where we discussed dealing with a disrespectful inmate. And I thought we can kind of do a little bit more frontline discussion here when it comes to small talk. Now, guys, our interactions with the inmate is greater than it ever has been before. The environment, sad to say, are more lax to some extent. I mean, we're not just locking inmates in and forgetting about them. I mean, inmates are walking around, heading the program. They're given a little bit more freedom. And during the course of that freedom, we are going to have forced interactions with them. You know, this is kind of what makes us a little bit different than police, because when police run to a project, all the bad people, they kind of scurry and hide. But we have to walk around the projects. They are not going to move, and we have to make sure that we have our presence. And that does mean that we are going to be engaging in small talk. Now, I want people to be wary of small talk, because if you're on the other end of answering questions and the inmate is just collecting just personal information, they're the ones that's asking it, then you got to realize something. The small talk is actually more beneficial for the inmate. I don't care how superficial it may be. If you're talking about football, if you're talking about your favorite car, the more information the inmate has on you that's personal, that's really outside of your prescribed role, the more they can pull you out of your prescribed role and connect with you on that personal information. Again, what's your favorite team? The Giants? I'm a Giants fan too. So you're no longer an inmate to officer or an inmate to staff member. It's more of two avid sports fans talking. Or, hey, you love cars? I love cars. You know, so having said that, when it comes to small talk, if you're the one answering the questions as opposed to the one asking the questions, be wary. Because the inmate is now finding out things that they could eventually use against you to pull you out of that prescribed role, maybe connect to some level of emotion, and it kind of blinds you by what decisions you're going to have to make if you're kind of leaning towards maybe being that's my boy, we're sports fans, or that's my boy, we like the same cars. What's your thoughts on small talk if it's not controlled, if you're the one that's answering questions more than asking them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, especially if you're forced to interact with an offender who, you know, you normally don't interact with, and all of a sudden they're interacting with you, you got to ask yourself why. They're using the conversation as a distraction so contraband can be passed around the wing. You know, are they trying to down the duck, you know, collecting personal information about you? You know, we're all going to have forced interactions with an offender, but you know, the main thing is to keep it minimal and never divulge any personal information against you, because, you know, just like you said, Anthony, anything you say can and will be used against you. It may not be today, may not be tomorrow, but it's going to be at some point. And, you know, the more they collect about you, the more they have on you, and the less ammunition you have for yourself.
And I love when you're talking about distraction, because you should see sometimes where the timing of the small talk occurs. Right when you're doing a round, this inmate wants to come up and talk about yesterday's sports game because he knows you're interested in sports. He knows that if I talk about sports with you, you're going to stop doing what you're doing. So therefore, I'll be the distraction. I'm the one that's finding out everything I can do, can be about sports. We connect on that. And while I'm distracting you, my people over here are doing what they got to do. Pass the contraband, salts, whatever it is that they got going on, because I know that I can connect to you on sports. And that's always going to stop you for a few moments just to chat. And I found out something too, guys. I don't care what capacity it is. If you're looking forward to seeing an inmate the next day to discuss whatever matter it is, you know it's gone too far. Like if you're at home and you're watching a sports game and all of a sudden the Giants win, and your first thought while you're at home is, I can't wait to tell inmate Smith. It's like, wait a second, guys. This small talk is now developed into something that's a little bit beyond just small talk. So I think, Joe, even small talk to some extent is employed strategically. You know, I mean, I know some cases, if I was small talking, one thing is I'm always asking the questions, but second thing is it never stops me from getting to point wherever I'm going. Like if I'm in point A and I'm trying to get to point B and some inmate's trying to engage me in small talk, I'll either keep talking as I go down the wing or tell the inmate, hold on, I'll be right back. And then as I come back, the inmate has nothing left to say.
Exactly.
You know, because again, I don't want it to stop my momentum. But do you think that small talk, I mean, it is a tool, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it can't be employed for good reasons, but I think that it should be strategically employed? I mean, what are some good times to engage in small talk?
I found the best time is after, for an example, when you've had a major assault on the wing between two offenders and you're trying to get to the bottom of it. I found that, giving it some time to pass later on, starting small talk with maybe a janitor, or starting small talk with another offender on the wing, and casually leading into it. And a lot of times they'll divulge information they don't really realize that they're divulging about it, especially when you couldn't identify the assailant or the victim, because we all know how that goes. They try to hide each other and not be seen by the administration. So, there are times where you can strategically employ small talk and drag little bits of information and put the pieces together. Investigation is one of them.
Yeah, and like when you said, with information, guys, remember, just as much as I said adversely, inmates can use it against us, we could also use it for them. If sometimes the more information we know about the inmates on our unit, the better we're able to manage them. It doesn't mean that they have to know that we're a sports fan, but if we want to know it, we could use that. We could use that for our advantage. But granted, remember, in the process of getting information, you have to be very, very wary of the information that you provide back, because as much as you could use it strategically, so could they. But I know, like, if you have an inmate that could be going through a crisis, a good rapport based on small talk could hold some weight. You're interacting with the inmate on the wing, and again, the inmate's a fan of cars, or maybe you're walking down the wing, and every time you're walking down the wing, you see the inmate watching the news, or you see the inmate through some consistent behavior watching basketball or sports. Then you kind of know, okay, this guy's into sports real quick. How do you know? Because every time I do my rounds, I see him watching sports, or I always see him talking to his family. Believe it or not, even in their consistent behavior, you could have great influence over knowing how to use that consistent behavior in a way to employ small talk strategically. But having said that, guys, if you look at it from the other perspective, they could do the same thing about you. They could watch how you maneuver. They could watch, who you talk to when you come in. They could probably hear what you're discussing with the other officers, and they start to know what your consistent habits are. So having said that, just as much as we can employ it strategically with them, they could also employ that strategically with us. But I do definitely think when you're doing your rounds, there's a lot of things that you could observe that can be utilized as a tool to either gain information or maybe to quell an inmate who seems to be going through some level of crisis. Would you agree with that, Joe?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've had that kind of rapport with the most aggressive inmates. The ones that other lieutenants and sergeants had to suit up a team and go get this guy out of his cell. Because of the fact that I've had them small conversations with him. And he knew I was firm, fair, and consistent. So when he was going through a crisis, and I remember when I was in high security, he was a maximum custody inmate. Wasn't afraid to assault an offender or staff. He just didn't care. He's serving a life sentence. He's got nothing to lose. But at the same time, I had that rapport with that, little bits of small talk where he knew I was coming from. And I was able to hold a decent conversation with him during a time of crisis. At that time, he was losing a family member to cancer. Couldn't go to the funeral because of his custody level and his sentence, and there was a lot of things going on. But during that course of the small talk, we were able to take him down to the chaplain's office and allow him to talk to his mother before she passed away. And there's times where small talk does strategically in placed. Small talk does, do us good. But on the flip side of that, man, I never have trusted it. When small talk's coming from an offender, when they start the conversation, because there's, to me, there's always a reason behind it. And the sad part about it is, you don't divulge any information about yourself that you can. I mean, hell, to this day, how paranoid I am. I've been retired a year and I still don't have my wedding ring back on. I never wore it while I was in the penitentiary because the less information they knew about me, the better. And that's the way I kept it.
Or when you were going through your divorces, you put the ring back on so they wouldn't know.
Well, between 2 and 3, it got to the point where,
but I want people to realize something. I mean, just be careful of those casual conversations that you wind up justifying by saying, oh, it's just small talk. What moment you say just small talk, you just minimize the importance of that interaction. Because again, if you don't think that their strategy behind it, then here's the scary thing about it, especially if you're saying it's just small talk. That means that your defenses aren't up and the inmate is totally got the ball and running down the field. So the moment you're saying, well, it's just small talk, then my next question as a supervisor or even at your peers say, well, it's just small talk. What are you saying? Because obviously, if it's just small talk, then you're not properly defending yourself in case the inmates ask some questions that start to cross that line. I mean, everything leads to somewhere. Favorite sports team could talk about what region you're from. Favorite sports cars. Hey, we know he likes to drive these cars, or we know he loves cars. I mean, people have been dumb enough to talk about where they like to shop. I mean, everything's strategically being employed. And again, the other thing is it just opens up a personal bond that could pull you out of a prescribed role. So now the connection's based on those similarities. And the funny thing is, guys, is that you may have a small talk with an inmate and they discover things about you. And next thing you know, they have the time to research it and become that avid fan. They may not have been before, but now they are because they knew who you are. And again, the employment of distraction or just to connect with you personal is just there through that through small talk, especially now with the increased interactions. Hey, Joe, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
Just be careful of your surroundings, be careful of your conversations, be careful of who's around you. Never, divulge any personal information about yourself. Like I said, that's just something that can be used against you later. Control the conversations. Make sure they're more one way, your way, than their way. And always be wary when an offender approaches you, and especially when you're in motion, doing your rounds, and all of a sudden they jump in front of you and want to ask you a 1,000 questions. You have to ask yourself why. And 9 times out of 10, it's because they're doing something they're not supposed to be, and they're running interference for one of their partners that are up to no good, either passing contraband, passing hooch, whatever. Just be aware of your surroundings and be careful about your conversations.
Love it. And guys, again, it's just another dialogue. It doesn't just really apply to frontline. This applies to all levels, because at any point you could be engaged in small talk with an inmate. And then again, you're the one answering all these questions. And it's like, hey guys, at the end of the day, who's really in control of that dialogue? So again, I wouldn't just always, it's just small talk. It's just small talk. Just be very careful, because if you don't go in a plan, if you don't go in with a road that you want to take, the problem is at that point, then they're the one driving the car. So I'm not willing to give them the driver's seat of any car that I'm in. As always, guys, the show is on the line. Don't forget, guys, subscribe to this channel, Guardian RFID. They have a lot of good content here for those that work in the corrections profession. As always, guys, stay safe.